Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in. Thank you all for being here, the post-lunch crowd. Hopefully you had some decent sandwiches and or salads upstairs. And we look forward to welcoming more of you in as we go. We have a great session here for our 1 o'clock afternoon session on Wednesday. Is this going? You figure, this is the 7th session. You figure I get this figured out by now. As always, thank you for being here. We thank all of our sponsors for the PDMI East, but we also especially thank our education sponsor, and that is Blue Water. Again, Blue Water has a video for you, and here it is.
Hey guys, Randy Jackson here.
Welcome to the future of pain relief.
At Tommy John, a lot goes into our underwear before you do.
But now I've found my bubbly side with SodaStream.
Ouch!
Philips Air Fryer is the original and the very best.
Kid Rock!
Hey, why is everybody so loud in infomercials?
But wait, there's more.
Yeah.
Woo!
So thank you again to Blue Water for their support. Today's session, Mid-Funnel Momentum, Unlocking the Path to Conversion and Loyalty, brought to you by TCA, great agency as well. And we're hosting webuyanycar.com. I'll let them introduce themselves to you. Paul, please take it away. Paul Sylvia from TCA is our moderator, and the rest of the crew will introduce themselves. Thank you.
Yeah. First and foremost, just a quick thank you to PDMI. This is always an amazing conference. There's amazing chances to make new relationships, build on old ones. You always come away having learned something new, so we appreciate the opportunity to attend, the opportunity to speak, and we will try to keep this quick so you guys can get back out in the sunshine. It's beautiful out today. Our topic today is mid-funnel momentum, unlocking the path to conversion and loyalty. We started to sit and look at this topic and realize that it's going to mean a lot of things, different things to a lot of different people. You're going to have a different definition at the beginning of this session, at the end of this session, and it's going to differ from ours. Everyone has different challenges. Everyone has different audiences and categories they're trying to reach and motivate. Everyone has different metrics they're held to. Everyone has different life stages of their brand or their marketing evolution. So really what we're going to do is try to provide sort of differing approaches, differing mentalities, and potentially some ways to rethink or recalibrate how you look at it in your approach to mid-funnel marketing. Before we dig in, let's do some quick intros. I'm Paul Sylvia, Senior Business Strategist at TCA. I've been there for 16 years, first on the media side of things, and now in what is essentially a business development / account management role. It's just making sure people understand what TCA and our parent company, OMG, Omnicom, can do for them, but also making sure that we deliver on that promise for our clients and customers. Sergei Peysakhov, he's our Executive Director of Marketing Analytics. He's been with TCA for about 4 years, but has a long history of audio work as well as data and analytics work. And then Jeremy Herbert, VP of Marketing at webuyanycar.com. He heads up all of their marketing across dozens of markets, all of which have a lot of nuance, life stage, on the ground, obstacles on the ground, advantages in each of their diverse markets. So he's really got his thumb on everything there, helping their marketing grow, making sure that they treat each market in a really intelligent and strategic way. And they've been fantastic partners as a client to TCA. The structure of this panel is essentially going to be 7 quick questions. Working through, we're going to try to provide a POV from the agency side as well as from the client side for each one. There's going to be moments where maybe our ideas of what mid-funnel means differ, even up on the panel as well as for yours, but we'll try to define first what mid-funnel means to us. So Serge and then Jeremy, as you guys were working through this exercise and as you were developing your talk track, how did you define mid-funnel? What did it mean to you as you worked through?
Yeah, so, kind of, like you said, it could mean a lot of different things to different people, the funnel and, always a lot of discourse around the funnel and what it means. But, I took a very broad and kind of expansive approach to it. There's a wide range of activity that marketers are doing. Let's define it by what it's not, right? At the top of the funnel, you're building your brand, you're building your awareness, you are just trying to create general mental availability for your brand and that it exists. Or you're trying to, maybe develop cultural cachet or just build warm, fuzzy feelings around your brand, right? And then if we talk bottom funnel, another way to call it is kind of demand capture, right? People are already pretty close to the point of conversion. they literally might have put something in their cart, right? So you might be doing display retargeting to try to get them to complete that purchase. They're pretty far down in the search funnel, and you're trying to get them again onto the site and take that final action, right? So if we sort of, consider those two things, then the mid-funnel is sort of somewhere in between, right? People can be in different stages of the journey towards the path to purchase. They might just be thinking about things. Maybe they took some initial actions and activities. And the role of the mid-funnel is to try to kind of catch them wherever they are in that journey and try to move them along. And sometimes, again, if they're further down in that journey, those actions will then move them closer to the point where you can capture them with some of that demand capture activity. But I also think if you do mid-funnel really effectively, it can serve a little bit of a double purpose, and you can actually build some branding, build some awareness and consideration for your brand, even for people who are not in that journey yet, but maybe they're going to be there 3 months from now. So it can kind of achieve a couple different things for you if you do it effectively.
Thanks, Serge. So I've been working with webuyanycar.com since about 2006. I'm the OG. And when I think back to what we were doing 10 years ago, the mid-funnel for us was just about taking people who've done a valuation of their car at the top of the funnel on the website and nurturing them, getting them through to that point where we can buy a car and hopefully make some money. That's really changed, and that acceleration has changed in the last 5 years. I no longer look at the mid-funnel as just retargeting. I look at the mid-funnel as a place where you can target people within the context of their funnel, even if they're not brand aware. And that, for me, has come about through different technologies that have emerged, particularly as post-pandemic people have moved more towards IP addressable media. You've got your Netflix, you've got all your streaming, you've got your YouTube, and it's become so much more easy to reach people within the context of their own funnel. Am I cutting it out? Give me a second. All right, we'll do that. Okay, so there's some really, really effective targeting strategies that we use at webuyanycar.com. And we tend to layer these into the mid-funnel. So obviously we're doing our performance marketing at the bottom, which is your demand capture, people who are ready to transact right now. We do a lot of mass media at the top of the funnel with TCA. And now we're layering in strategies like customer match, using our first-party data to build out lookalike audiences. We're layering in-market observations, which come from platforms like Google. So, for example, somebody who's in market to purchase an automobile really works for us. We've observed that over the years, and now we target those people. Affinity groups, so that's not one of our best audiences, but I think if you're selling, finance or, you're in certain industries, then looking at people who have an affinity, an interest in that industry can be very useful. That's one of the layers that we put in. And then my favorite, custom intent. One of the really nice things that I like about Google is that they allow you to build audiences based around keywords, which people have been typing into Google. So if you understand your customers and where they've been going, what they've been searching for, you can find other customers that look like them, and that's the most effective audience that we find. Then layering that on, if you were going to do one thing to come above performance marketing, I'd definitely suggest strategies like demand gen and performance max, because they do give you a broad range of capabilities within Google's platforms. And it's really, for us, it's allowed us to scale beyond performance marketing. And then you can layer on other things like programmatic CTV, you can layer on programmatic audio. The mid-funnel has really exploded for us. It's changed beyond all recognition.
Awesome. Great responses from both of you. The next question is really going to build on this. So now that we've defined mid-funnel and what it means for each of you, what are some of the challenges or obstacles that you're facing when it comes to generating mid-funnel engagement and conversion?
Yeah, I can start. Pretty much, even as the data guy, I feel like there's, lots of challenges that we can solve. But the one I always see, from a creative standpoint, I just feel like it's something that we don't talk about nearly enough. And that to me always feels like a challenge, getting that exact right message, having variations in it, having it be memorable. And again, if you're kind of living in that mid-funnel, having it sort of speak to potentially a lot of different mental journeys, a lot of people at different stages of that path to purchase, and to move them along towards some action. And again, for those people who aren't even there yet, to again hopefully build some of that awareness and consideration, I just feel like that's a challenge to do from a creative standpoint. And I think we'll talk about that a little bit more. And of course, measurement is always a challenge. That's where, a lot of folks come to us and ask for ways we can help there. And, what's been interesting is a lot of things that used to not be measurable are now quite measurable. There's been a massive proliferation of tools and capabilities that allow you to measure, so many different channels in so many different ways with so many different approaches, bottom up, top down, et cetera. But I think the challenge is now much less about the tools and even like picking among the tools, but it's actually taking a step back and developing a measurement strategy and treating it as a strategic vision of what you do with measurement, right? Just like how you approach, marketing media, right? You don't just throw out some dollars out there and hope it works, right? You have a marketing strategy, media strategy, and I think that needs to be applied to measurement strategies, right? Having a strong perspective on, first of all, what are you going to measure? What are going to be your KPIs? A little bit about what are the tools you're going to use, but also very importantly, what do you do with that data? What do you do with those results? Do you optimize blindly to the highest number, or do you take certain things with a grain of salt? How do you marry that with the other data that you're receiving? So I think the challenge is much more organizational and having a strategy around measurement. The tools will then sort of start falling out. Those are easier questions to answer once you have a really strong perspective as a brand, how you're going to look and interpret the attribution data.
Yeah, I agree with Serge. Measurement's really important, but you've got to make sure as a marketer that your measurement KPIs are aligned with the business. And that's been key for us in developing. We work very closely with operations, or as we would call them, sales. I've seen other businesses before where they work in silos, and operations says, we need more leads, so marketing delivers more leads. But the feedback cycle doesn't necessarily mean you're getting the right kind of leads. As we've discovered, not all leads are created equal. So it's important to look at those down funnel conversions as well. Even as a marketer, I care about what's happening, what gets us that car, and more importantly, what gets us that car that's going to earn us good money. And what can we learn from our teams, what can we learn from our data to scale that up. If you've not already started with the mid-funnel strategy, I mentioned Google. Obviously, that's an easy place to start because they've got such a huge audience in that ecosystem and access to search, display, and video with YouTube. For us, we're then starting to scale using other channels. So we've got performance marketing. We're layering on now programmatic CTV we've played with quite a lot, and picking audiences which work well for us. CTV as well is a good place for us to do retargeting. We have it all connected up with our first-party data, so we can see people who've been to the website. We can retarget them. I would say if you're looking at setting up tracking, use every capability to your best advantage. And one thing we did when we were evaluating programmatic CTV, we did some work with Mountain, and we were able to pass through an ID, a specific ID for that action for our customer into that platform, and then we were able to download that after the event and critique their attribution of the conversions we were seeing. And you can see that some of those people had already been on Google. This wasn't the first touch point, but it gave us a way to break that down, sanitize it, and really understand the incrementality of that mid-funnel strategy above what we were doing in performance marketing. I would say definitely don't silo brand and performance marketing. A lot of companies like to have their brand guy and their performance team. The way I always look at it is across every stage of the funnel. What I'm really interested in, what is my overall marketing CPA? And I'm looking at that on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, and a quarterly basis to make sure that as I'm layering in new strategies, I'm not losing sight of the attribution piece. I'm not starting to have channels competing for that same conversion. And don't be afraid of machine learning optimization. I'd say as a marketer, machine learning isn't out there to come and get your job. But machine learning is it's our job to learn how to do it better than other brands. Now, in terms of creative thoughts, as Serge alluded, creative is really important to us. And for me, a couple of key things. Remember, you're not the customer. You all sit around the board table and the CEO's got their own perspective of what you should be doing. You're not the customer. And it's our job as a marketer to remind people of that. You need to do that research, really understand what that customer's needs and desires are, and then learn how to activate them. So I would say, if you've not heard of this, it's pretty basic, the ABCD of advertising. Particularly when you get into platforms like YouTube and CTV, you've got seconds to hook that person. So think about the attention. What do you do in that first 3 seconds of the ad before they hit skip? So you need that killer hook to bring them in. Brand often and brand early. We have a sonic jingle which plays at the beginning of the ad. So even if they skip it, I've still got the branding in there. Then connect with the customer. The customer doesn't care what you want as a brand. All the customer cares about is their own needs and desires. So really understanding what you can do to help that customer and making that connection is so important. And then finally, direction. Don't forget that call to action. Ask for the business.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. This next question, you've already sort of, wow. Okay, we landed where we're supposed to. We just toggled like 5 slides. This next question, you've already sort of alluded to, and you've already sort of gotten a little bit ahead of this headline. But there is a blurring more and more between performance and brand. Many people see them as a hybrid or brandformance or what have you, and they position it that way because they understand that each of those has an impact on each other. Just like you said, you shouldn't silo those teams. But what are some ways to fit mid-funnel into those traditional brand or those traditional DR strategies? What have you learned when people try to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll kind of answer this question with a case study almost, with a story that we had around Performance Marketer, where we were running sort of, again, I guess maybe you'd call it a hybrid or a brandformance campaign. Had some higher, more premium elements, network TV, some prime, some high-value cable, and then a lot more kind of DR, strong performance elements, some performance CTV, actions like that, right? And it was a pretty balanced campaign. It was doing really well. And the client said, okay, that's great, but like, what if we take just the top performing elements of that campaign and just do those things, right? Can we get a super hyper performance campaign that's going to get us the same efficiency of those like strongly attributed elements and just do those things? We were a little bit skeptical about this one, but the client insisted, and we tried it out. And first thing we saw, the campaign, the total performance of the campaign tanked, right? Did not perform nearly as well as the prior campaign had. And the attribution of all those high-performing elements was significantly worse than it was in the immediately prior campaign, without really anything else being different. And so what's going on, right? The beauty of it was that we were able to very quickly course correct. We actually said, what if we actually take those quote-unquote non-performing elements, add them back into the campaign, see what happens? Campaign pretty much reverted back to what we had seen previously, right? The non-performing, quote, non-performing elements did have worse attribution than the performing elements, but those high-performing elements started performing like they used to. And so, I think that really illustrates really well Jeremy's point just a few seconds ago, how if you start really siloing those things and don't have them work together, those performance elements are going to very quickly harvest sort of all the fruits that you planted with your other marketing activity, with your upper and mid funnel activity, and you're just going to very quickly run out of steam. You need to be sort of reinforcing and moving people along that journey. If you just do the demand capture things, again, there's only a certain amount of people at that stage of the funnel. You're going to get them all pretty quickly, and then suddenly the campaign runs dry. So at this point, I think the real strategy is to see those things as highly integrated, often doing them together in the same campaign, or at least working very cohesively, so you can keep that journey moving and keep those customers coming in.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, measurement is very important and it's very powerful, but with that great power comes some caution. What we observe as a business when we do branding is that we see inherently a 20% uptick on our non-brand PPC campaigns, because we're generating not only brand awareness, but we're generating kind of category awareness, that there is this capability out there, in our case, to be able to sell a car that's not to a dealer or to a private seller. So people will come and search for related terms. They're not actually searching for us, but they're then doing their research. And we see a natural uptick, in that bottom of the funnel. So effectively, your top of funnel branding is making that performance marketing look more efficient. And if you're not aware of that, you could be giving credit to your performance marketing channels, or suddenly becoming more efficient because of your branding at the top of the funnel, and you could optimize the other way. The other thing we've observed, throughout the years, we've done probabilistic spike modeling, and that makes cable look very good. It makes daytime look very good, and before you know it, you're showing all your ads on Judge Judy, and it's not good. You can't scale that. So you got to use other techniques. You can get into beyond probabilistic, you can get into deterministic modeling. I would say, mid-funnel is great for many things. It's great for your existing leads, so you should definitely be targeting people. And even if mass media doesn't work for you as a brand, even if mass media doesn't work for you as a brand, maybe you're very niche. Look at this mid-funnel and think about how you can better target your customers, either by using lookalike audiences, finding people who look like they're going to be one of your customers, or through those niches. Are they searching for your competitors? In which case, you can use strategies like custom intent to say, I'm going to go conquesting, find people who've searched for my competitor, and I'm going to serve them ads. Why not? Do that, get them to your website, and then serve them ads on CTV, on YouTube. I would say you really want to be experimenting, do everything in increments, and really learn what that's doing to your overall marketing funnel, your overall marketing CPA.
Yeah, all right. So that's sort of where mid-funnel fits into traditional strategies. We wanted to start this next question with Jeremy again, talking about some of your approaches to mid-funnel, things that you've executed and can be successful or unsuccessful, learns you've made, and then Serge can tag on at the end with essentially things we've learned from other clients outside of your specific category.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when it comes to your own mid-funnel, obviously the fundamentals of email and SMS, maybe in WhatsApp, if you've got, we were talking before about the Hispanic community, and they do, genuinely love WhatsApp. So, think about ways your customers want to communicate with you. For us, we like to do, as soon as somebody comes to the top of the funnel, we do a personal introduction from the local branch. Hey, marketing wrote the email, but the customer doesn't know that. It's a nice way to do an outreach. And then we will start leaning into customer pain points and how we can overcome those pain points for the customer, because ultimately they don't care about what we want. They care about what they want, so we have to position things accordingly. And don't forget those calls to action. At every stage of the journey, give them a way to take that next action. I would say segment your funnel where it makes sense. Sometimes the juice isn't worth the squeeze. But for us, we can look at different customers who have different categories of car. They might have different treatments we want to put through the funnel. You know your own business better. We talked about retargeting. For us, we find retargeting using a machine learning strategy like demand gen works really, really well, because then you can target not only everybody, but you can use the signals within Google and within Meta to target the people who they see as more likely to convert. We're now trying to figure out how do we take our first-party data and feed those signals much earlier in the funnel back into those platforms. If we could score leads and push them into different audiences, that's kind of the next step we're going for. I would say pay attention to how your business is following up those leads. It's easy to say, I'm a marketer, I bring in the leads, those guys deal with them, but have that relationship with your sales team. By them becoming better, that makes your marketing better. I sit around a table with my team once a week. I have finance there, I have operations. We all work very, very closely together, and data science come in. We all talk about how we can optimize our funnel as one team. And then other suggestions you can use to help activate mid-funnel. Think about your win-loss analysis. You get all these customers coming in at the top of the funnel. You pay lots of attention to those you can convert. What about surveying those people who don't convert? Let's ask them why. What didn't they like about us? Are we an obnoxious brand? Did they read something bad about us? I'd rather know about that and then be able to tackle that and improve as a business. Another top tip, look at AI chatbots, particularly if you've got like an online journey. They can be very useful for answering simple questions. But what I really like about AI chatbots is you can put them in a key stage in the conversion process, say almost like ask me anything. And then you can monitor the questions that it's asking of the chatbot, not only to make sure that you give it the right answers, but to understand what those customer pain points are. And it's been very, very insightful for us. We've been able to make some fundamental changes to our business after understanding what a customer really wants of us. And then finally, top tip, don't leave conversion rate optimization on your website to your product team. They don't know your customers like your marketing team do. Again, it's all about looking at every aspect of that funnel and getting involved as a team, looking at every aspect of that funnel and how do we optimize the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's an incredible list of strategies and things to try. I think, everyone can take something away. My only add to that, or the only thing I would layer is, within even, kind of the mid-funnel, don't forget the impact of mass media. It can be incredibly impactful there. Again, just as kind of an example, a lot of times that path to purchase or that funnel or that journey often begins, between the ears, right? We actually are in the market for a car, but we've actually not yet put out any digital signals as a family. That's something we're thinking about. It's literally just conversations between me and my wife. So, but we're, potentially in the mid-funnel, right? We already have a lot of thoughts about what we're considering, what we've liked before. And so, very hard. I mean, maybe some brilliant AI model can sort of guess from the other factors of our household that, we might be at the stage where a second car is needed. But, outside of that, mass media is sort of a way to reach a lot of people who may be already on that journey. They've just not really given you any signals or given your brand any signals that they're ready to engage with you. And mass media can be a great way to start them on that journey, get them searching for your brand and interacting with your brand, and then activate a lot of those strategies as the next step after that to keep them moving.
Yeah, just coming back to that point, one of the things we do with TCA, we work very closely together and we strategize our brand marketing according to brand awareness within each one of the markets that we do. Because we're rolling out regionally. We don't have billions of dollars to roll out into all of the markets at the same time. So we're growing organically. And so I've got a market in one part of the country that's got 60% aided brand awareness, some which are more like 20. And we've broken them down into strategies. But what we find is it's quite, when we look at the impact of brand marketing, it's not just about getting those leads, it's the impact that has on your customer. And we see a direct correlation between brand awareness and our ability to convert customers because they're gaining that faith in the brand, they know about you, and they're more likely to convert with you, which is really important for us as a car dealer. You're asking somebody to sell you $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 car, and they need to have that trust factor. So the branding really, really helps us with that.
Awesome. All right, so moving on to the next question, I'm going to do a slight rephrase on this one. Instead of what we've got up on the screen, Serge, what is the agency's role in supporting a client's mid-funnel efforts with data and tech?
Yeah, I mean, the goals and the purposes of the agency, again, has always been a discourse as long as I've been in this space. Obviously, as an agency, we bring, a lot of perspective on the marketplace, a strong pulse on what's available out there, what's working, what we see across a range of clients, certainly pricing power. But it's becoming more and more about tools and technologies that are otherwise challenging for brands, even much, much bigger brands, to have a little bit, a tool that does all of those things. And sort of as a centralized agency, with the power and the backing of a pretty major holding company, we're able to bring in a lot of those tools that, again, even a big brand might have the budget to do one or two of these things, but instead you now have the full gamut. So we do have the capability to onboard a first-party data set, match it against a proprietary identity graph within our marketing orchestration tool. Sorry, this will sound a little bit like a plug, but match that first-party data, match that identity graph of people, of households in the United States to a media consumption graph, so knowing all the different ways and all the media touch points that can reach those individuals, and then sort of run and execute a campaign in these different tools and different capabilities, again, from inception and planning to all the way through execution and measurement. Again, just as one example, a planning tool within Omni allows you to use marketing mix models to plan your cross-channel allocation. Now again, a lot of brands don't have a mix model. That's totally okay. It actually has curves aggregated for your industry across a lot of brands that have executed marketing mix models, and use those curves to help you with planning a campaign or planning your cross-media allocation. Say you do have a marketing mix model in place, that's perfect. That's even better. We can actually take those curves, plug them in, and ingest them directly. So that's just kind of one example of a tool where you as an individual brand could go out and acquire something like that, but it's tough to do a little bit of everything. And as an agency partner, we're able to bring all that capability sort of in one package out of the box.
I love the word agency partner because traditionally we've looked at it. We do all of our performance marketing in-house, we still do, and then we go out to our media agency and buy top-of-funnel media. But now with that mid-funnel becoming so much more sophisticated, the whole thing is so much more integrated. And the reason we changed our media agency last year and moved to TCA was that we were so impressed with their ability to strategize, but a real focus on measurement, which we just didn't see with our previous agency. And we lost some ground, I think, because we were not adapting quickly enough after the pandemic, with things moving much more towards CTV and away from traditional linear. So it's a good partnership to have, looking at things in the same way, even though we buy separately. How can we work together better?
Yeah, and we're looking for ways, obviously, to integrate that even further. So that's a great conversation to be having. This next question, we will start with Serge. And just talking about the impact of mid-funnel on measurement. I think we're all pretty confident on how to measure brand. Performance can generally be relatively easy to measure. How's mid-funnel best measured in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about this and kind of touched on this a couple times already, but measurement is critical at any stage of the funnel, but certainly here where you are sort of in this brand formance zone. A concept that I'm just very personally obsessed with and something I think about all the time is this idea called Goodwin's Law, which is that when a measure becomes the objective, it stops being a good measure. And this is just an important concept, like in all areas of life. There's classic examples like in education. You're trying to make students in your city do better in school and be smarter, and so you do standardized testing. But if that sort of becomes the only measure, and especially if there's incentives tied to that measure, you get teachers teaching to the test. The measure looks, gets better, but students aren't actually any better off. That's kind of the most classic example. There are many others, but I think that's actually a very, very common problem in our industry, in marketing, right? We tend to have, we have KPIs, and it's in the word, right? Performance indicators. They are not the thing you're trying to achieve, right? You're trying to grow your business. That's not the same as the cost per valuation of a TV network spot, right? But we sort of start taking those KPIs and treating them as the be-all, end-all, and that can lead to another concept that again, I didn't take credit for, but I think it's a very important one, but it's the attribution death spiral. It's where you start shrinking your plan to be narrower and narrower by optimizing only to those top-performing channels. It's again kind of like the example that I used earlier, right? You shave off everything that doesn't perform to some perfect standard, and then what you're going to see is your plan is going to get narrower and narrower. Your ROI is going to look great on that KPI, but your business is going to shrink, and that's obviously not a good place to be. So that's not to say don't use measurement. Measurement is critical. Measurement is important. There was a gentleman on the last panel who provocatively said all attribution is wrong. Philosophically, I think I agree with that, right? Again, that attribution isn't any number. It's not true in any sense. It's a model. It's something that represents something in real life, and we need to interpret it and then optimize it, but be very careful about making sure that we have a good perspective on what it tells us, and very importantly, what it doesn't tell us.
Yeah, I came from a software engineering background and then digital marketing background, where you get very, very good attribution. And there's a temptation to have very high expectations at the top of the funnel. And I've had to learn over the years that there is still art in marketing. There's a lot of science, but there's also some art. Sometimes it does feel like you're stepping onto the casino floor. And I know where I can put some chips and get a good result, but others, I'm just going to have to experiment and try very structured experiments and see what the results are. And you've got to look at that overall funnel, and that overall funnel in all of your markets. What's my overall marketing CPA, and how can I experiment over time and get that marketing CPA down or increase volume? So one of the things we put in place, and I was actually really pleased to hear SNHU on a panel earlier, and they were talking about Innovid XP, which was one of the key selling points as we were looking at moving our media buys over to TCA. So we use that, but we use it as almost like signals. It shows us how our CTV, cable, and linear buys are performing comparably. Now, cable is on a probabilistic model, linear is on a deterministic model. So you've got to be careful how you compare things. Otherwise we'd just be going straight to linear. But it gives us good ways to look at what channels, what creatives, what day parts perform within each one of these clusters. And then we can tweak things on the fly. That's the thing we like about working with you, is that we can tweak things. And if we see aspects of the campaign that don't work quite as well as others, we can put more money in that direction. But we always want to keep a view of the overall reach and frequency of the top of funnel campaign. So I would say, when you get into tools like that, they're good key performance indicators, not hard metrics. So, we know our cost per valuation looks crazy when you look at some of the channels, but we know that it's having an impact on the mid-funnel and also the performance marketing funnel. And together we have to look at everything.
Yeah, I mean, related to that, just to add a little bit more. But again, I think we often make the mistake in this space of sort of using attribution or using a tool and having it accomplish two distinct goals that I don't think we, again, talk about enough, that they're pretty separate. To me, measurement is trying to answer one of two questions, right? There's optimization, which is, what can I do now to make this campaign work harder? Then there's evaluation. Was this campaign good? Did it drive my business? Did it increase? And tools that are good at one are usually not that good at the other, and vice versa, right? And so Innovid is a tool that we use very much for that optimization. It's telling me right now, here's the things that we can do in market to make this campaign work harder. But that number that's being generated, if it's I'm making up a number, if it's a $10 cost per acquisition, is it truly that 10? We don't really know, right? We need to find other ways. That 10 is a relative number to other numbers that we can use to optimize, but it's, again, not that be-all, end-all number. Then we should assume that, hey, every time I put in $10, I'm going to get exactly one acquisition back. Mm-hmm.
Great, guys. We're heading into our last prepared question. This one really should just sort of be things you guys are passionate about, things that you think are new and next, things you're adopting now. But what are some emerging trends in mid-funnel marketing that you're excited about or interested in or even enacting now?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the things that we talked about on this panel, we're seeing more and more brands moving to that direction. I do think, and you guys, I think we're early to this, but I do see there's a trend to stop truly thinking of it as performance and brand, that they're totally separate, and that never the twain shall meet, right? They're all interacting. Consumers are always on a range of different journeys through that purchase funnel. And this idea of brandformance, I'm seeing it talked about a lot more frequently, and I think it's a good thing, right? I think it's good that brands are thinking in those terms and realize those things work really well together, and I hope to see more of that. I'm also excited for the idea that brands will start, again, kind of the last thing I just talked about, is they start thinking about how they're using to evaluate campaigns and that attribution, that it's very, very powerful, but knowing its limitations. Again, I was happy to hear on the prior panel that was talked about a little bit as well, knowing that it has those limitations and being very savvy about sort of what you use it for, and again, very importantly, what you don't use it for. I think those are really smart conversations, and brands that sort of incorporate that and, again, have that framework, have that strategy around measurement at the whole company level, getting the CEOs buy-in as well, getting finances buy-in, right? If everyone kind of sees it that way, we think brands can be really successful.
Yeah, I would say one of the emerging trends has emerged. The speed of change since the pandemic, particularly towards connected TVs. Everybody's here. LG's here, Samsung's here. I've probably missed somebody off that list, and I apologize. But that consumer behavior, we used, as a performance marketer, we used to change often. But now we're seeing that in the branding world as well. Everything's shifted towards CTV. I used to be able to go out and buy mass media and buy 150 points of TV and get a very consistent result. And then we had the pandemic, we came back advertising again. It's like, crap, this doesn't work. We've got to figure out a new way. And unfortunately, as marketers, the only way we can figure out what's working is to spend and measure. So yeah, I would say CTV is obviously an emerging and a continually changing dynamic within the ecosystem, and it will continue to change as there are mergers between different companies. We just want to get back to what's the currency and how do we buy this stuff, what can we expect from it. But Then again, it's become so much more complicated because I'm not just now buying a TV spot or a day part. I can actually buy into an audience, which is, when you think about it, pretty cool. Because I can now, I don't have to get it into a fully fledged mass media campaign. I can do a very targeted CTV campaign, whether it's working through a programmatic provider or working through your agency and buying media. There are ways to get into this that are so much more targeted now, and I think consumers expect that. Last thought from me is, we talked a lot about CTV, branding, performance marketing. I would say ignore things like TikTok and YouTube at your peril. YouTube now accounts for 12% of all the time Americans spend watching TV. So we're trying to figure out how much of that YouTube, how much of our mass media budget should be in YouTube. That's something we're trying to figure out together. It's awkward because we've always relied on our media agency to buy media for us. Now we're looking at, kind of, I could buy this, you could buy it. How do we work together? How do we experiment? So very much a partnership, but by a show of hands, anybody watch YouTube on the big screen device? All right, at least 50% of the room. Yeah, it's changed. It's not for the kids. TikTok's not about dancing anymore. I'm sure there are people in the room who watch TikTok as well. Not me yet, but I'm sure it's coming. So really think about those other channels that you can dial into and the capabilities of getting to those people who are in the mid-stage of their own funnel. How do we reach them, and how can we use that as a gap, or as a stopgap between performance and that top of funnel branding, which is so important as well.
Time for audience questions. All right.
Hey, thanks, guys. Jeremy, you mentioned monitoring your performance metrics monthly and weekly, I think you said. Is there a value to you to be able to look at them on a daily basis? If they're refreshing every 24 hours and having that recency?
Yeah, so for me, I'm looking at the performance of the business almost intraday. It's particularly from a performance marketing perspective, because we have a lead funnel. So customers come to the website and value a car. And so I will check on various times of the day to see whether our lead volume at the top of the funnel is up or down. It's giving me an indication of what we're likely to be spending from a performance marketing perspective, but also at stages where we're doing brand marketing. Are we having that impact? So yeah, I'm looking at everything as a intraday basis, understanding what's going on. I'm looking at the sales results at the bottom of the funnel. It gives me an idea. Yeah, we're not selling cans of beans. We're selling used automobiles. It's a very fickle market. It has seasonality and confidence, especially now with tariffs. It's like we don't know whether the price of new cars coming into the country is going to go up by 25%. That could change tomorrow. So we have to watch literally intraday. We're watching intraday, daily, weekly, monthly, and then quarterly to make sure that we're getting the right momentum on all of our key performance indicators.
Anyone else?
I always have questions, you know me. I missed the first 15 minutes, so apologies. And if I did also, if you guys talked about it, you can tell me to shut up, it's okay. But that being said, I was just curious, you guys talked about obviously the lead funnel hitting the site, retargeting on CTV and whatnot. Just curious from an exposure perspective, right? There are people who see your ad, don't hit the website. How do you find them again?
See the ad and don't hit the website.
Because you obviously targeted them, right? They saw the ad because they were targeted for a certain reason. Data, some modeling, expose them. Who knows what they had interest in? Good completion rate, right? Mm-hmm. How do you then try to push that, see if they might hit the website, if they didn't? Like almost how do you exposure retarget?
Yeah, so one of the things I'd really like to do is understand who else is in the space and where they might, if they're exhibiting those signals of being close to the bottom of the funnel, where else are they going researching? And then I like to use custom intent. So effectively taking those search indicators in Google and then using those to create an audience and then to go after that person. You're not going to hit the same people, the right people all of the time. And even if you hit the right people, they might see the TV commercial, think these people are obnoxious and they don't want to do business with it anyway. We do survey frequently, like aided brand awareness, but we also see like brand perception. And we know, hey, we come on TV, our TV commercial is, webuyanycar.com, webuyanycar.com, and we're not for everybody. So, we're always looking at that and, looking at a brand perception. But yeah, the only way you can do that is to survey your customers, listen to them, and really understand what works for them and what they don't like about you, so that you can change that over time.
And you also have to think about, purchase cycle, right? That, you don't buy or sell a car, every day, even, it's in many cases a multi-year process, right? So at any point in time, many, if not most, almost all consumers, this is not exactly relevant to them today. At the same time, almost everyone has cars, and at some point in the future, they will actually enter that journey, right? And that's where that branding, we did talk about it a little bit in the beginning, but this idea that, some of this creative, that branding, it is doing double duty, right? Someone who is in that, at some stages of that funnel, hopefully you're moving them along, hopefully you do get them to engage, but maybe if they don't, they might just not be there yet. But we know that in markets where you guys in particular have been present for a number of years, where you have that branding, at some point when that consumer does enter that stage, they're just that more likely to convert, especially if they're reminded again. So again, if you're, if they don't respond, if your creative is able to, sort of build that branding as well as be more of a performance creative, that's when you really hit that sweet spot, because again, you might be just creating a future conversion at some point down the line.
Yeah, it's so easy to sell. You can sell somebody a 6-pack of Bud every week. I mean, I can't get them to come in and sell us a car every week. So it is really like longer play, but that's why you have your funnel stacked. Performance at the bottom to harvest, your mid-funnel to hit those people who are, they look close to conversion, and then your long-term branding.
Anyone else? Oh, all right, we got one right back here.
Yeah, thanks. So you mentioned moving more to digital, YouTube TV, TikTok, things like that. How much is the line blurring since you're going to digital between TV and everything else that's video, like YouTube, non-YouTube TV, for example? Since you're in the digital space at that point, do you just keep on swimming into other lanes?
That's a really good question. I think generally you've seen a big, I wouldn't say a move away from traditional media and traditional programming, but what you've seen is the rise of the creators. I'm slightly biased because I'm also a YouTube creator. Not a very good one, but I get a $10.99 from Google, put it that way. And I actually got into that because I was fascinated by the channel, how people make money from it. And before I knew it, I was making my own videos, and it's been pretty cool to understand the medium. But I think people have been rewired. I think that's your phrase. Since the pandemic, everybody's gotten used to snacking on content, and people don't want to snack necessarily on very high production quality content, but they do still want to sit down. So I think you've got to have a good mix of getting into that snacky content with creators, and then also thinking about how you're running mid-roll, pre-roll with the premium episodic content, and that's obviously where we come into linear. That's where we come into CTV. That is one of the really good things that I like about CTV, is that people aren't just casually watching a lot of the time CTV programs. They are choosing to engage with that content on a large screen or a small screen device, and that's a great time to catch them. So I think you've got to have that mix, put in place a good measurement strategy so you can understand what is resonating with your customers, where your customers are ingesting content, and then kind of experiment with it, and then double down on the areas that work really well for you as a brand.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, I absolutely agree with you. I think there's definitely some line blurring, but I think the snacking analogy is a good one. It's an and, it's not an or, where yes, we now have so much more media to sort of snack on, but there are still meals, right? People still do sit down and have that more. I'm looking for something that's more long form content, more premium, higher production. Sometimes kind of the streaming services, and we do see a little bit of a difference in how people consume and then also how they respond. So as much as lines have blurred, there is still that distinction with that longer form content. We do still seeing it kind of have its own place, and it's about kind of supplementing that with new strategies with these emerging media channels, and not about, let's jump ship and switch out of TV because it's not working anymore. Let's just jump in, put everything on TikTok, right? That's probably not the right strategy.
Yeah, you still need that mix.
Time for one more if someone wants it. All right, how about a round of applause for our